and I will tell all the glorious people about it.
Only the glorious ones, or all of the glorious people?
Well, preferably only the glorious ones. I guess the non-glorious ones really kind of need it.
It's been a while since I felt glorious, to be honest. That
just won't do then.
Well, glorious, I think that's a special word for some sort of victory or some glorious achievement of some sort. I've been sitting at home a lot for the better part of a year.
What do we call this? What do we call this?
What do we call what?
What do we call the name of the thing?
Oh, Unity. And we're live right now, by the way.
Oh, hi, everyone.
Unity a fancy word for shadow work, or the other way around? We're talking about how a functioning democracy would kind of look like collective shadow work. We're talking about, I'm not feeling my best today, and I think that that's a good way to begin, with a statement of honesty.
Yeah, you don't seem like your normal chipper self.
Because I am currently not. And I'm not sure what's the cause of that, but it's an interesting thing. I've been thinking a lot about how we don't know what's bugging us. And it just appeared. I probably watched more C-SPAN in the last week. Yes, for sure. I think I've absorbed more hours of C-SPAN, which is the elected officials of the United States of America talking it out in a big special chamber that just had a big terrible thing happen the other day. And
did you watch it today?
Yeah, I did a bunch. Today was the most infuriating, actually.
Really? Even though we got impeached, you're still infuriated?
To see their back and forth, to see how much people who hold these roles suck at what it is, or what. And I could present this as a question like this. That's the topic right now. It's like, what would a functioning entire person, a choir of parts of a self coming together to be whole, be doing, or what would the effort of that be? Because that seems like what it would, like, you have a vote amongst the special votes who got voted to go and do democracy, and they spend their time railing on each other.
Well, that's how you do politics. That's all really anybody ever wants to see.
But I don't get.
They want their side to win.
Yeah, I understand. I understand having that impulsive knee jerk, and I understand the thing. There was a dude today, and I think he might have been a Republican, who I thought it was very interesting that he said that he gave an intro that then could have split in either direction, and I realized that how much that's happening. That, like, the intro to right now of whether to impeach or not. It's like, because one side is saying, if you impeach, you will set a precedent for rushing it through this way, and then we'll have that terrible precedent for presidents of the future. And the other side is saying what to my value system seems like the very obvious thing, is that we unite against setting the precedent that if you are president, you can call for an insurrection and have one happen. Boy. Oh,
yeah. Boy. Well, that's really interesting, because technically, as Americans, that is our constitutional responsibility. Where if it looks like things have gone the way of corruption, which is the claim that they're making, that we do actually have a constitutional responsibility to revolt.
There's a lot of things where where a mob is driven with something that has a very valid point about it, but is just not being thorough and being incomplete in its narrative. And that's one of them too. Yeah, there's supposed to be a point, but making it one-sided makes it a failed revolution always.
Don't you think that if our government had become this big, corrupt, tyrannical thing that had the media on its side and was basically brainwashing everybody into being subservient to it, don't you think they might take the people who were trying to stop them and maybe make them look bad, possibly even irredeemable? and then block out anything that might give them any kind of foothold whatsoever, and only show the things that are going to make them look terrible. Don't you think that's exactly what would happen under those circumstances?
Oh yeah, no, I get it. That's the really the maddening thing is seeing all the factions, knowing what they think, what they believe about the world and their place in it, knowing what they think about the other side, and then just watching the slow moving train wreck. It's like, I'm not saying like when I say unity, I'm not calling for anybody to let go of irreconcilable disagreements in some cases, but a lot of them are reconcilable. That's the thing, is that's what to the metaphor of like what, and it's like a real living metaphor. Because also I'm noticing today, it's like the ones who I think when they have their moment to speak, like use it just to be like, those guys are cunts, you know. And you have a and there's even a rule that you address things to Madam Speaker, and like don't, and then every now and then somebody will turn and unleash because you pricks have been fucking, and it's like, we remind you that you direct all of you. I'm stoned. Sorry. I'm not apologizing for being stoned. You direct all of your stuff to the speaker, and they still like just every side-eyed way. And then there's a few though who come on and say things where it's like, yep, that meets the moment. That's what, and kind of, and this is just totally my, as some asshole watching and analyzing things, like you could see who the people who aren't whole people up there, you know, what a person who is, you know, because I would think that if you got to that position, like what seems, I don't want to use a word like sane and say that you're always insane if you're, but it kind of is. It seems really, really, unwell to me to want a position of power but not want the truth of what it is and the position that it puts you in and the responsibility.
That seems to make more sense to me, that people would want power without responsibility,
because it gives them boners.
Well, yeah, that's like the default, to want the responsibility of the power. I think very few people want that. Very few good-hearted people would want to contend with what you would have to contend with in order to get to those situations. Like, that's why politician is on the list of top 5 most common careers for psychopaths. It's like politician, CEO, lawyer, surgeon, and one other thing I can't remember. But politician is right up there in the top 5 of most common careers for psychopaths and sociopaths. And it's because you have to kind of play a sociopathic game in order to get there in the first place. Because that's who you're competing with in the first place, is whoever's going to do the worst thing is going to win. Yeah. And so when you got all those people doing the worst thing so that they can win, those end up being all the people at the top. A bunch of hollow, know nothing, do nothing goobers that just wanted to have power over people.
Goobenstuzens. That's what I shouted at the television today. You're being a Goobenstuben.
That's a good one, I think.
Goobenstuben. I'd like to say any variant of goober. Which my sister and I got into like a heated discussion about this. The term goober, should it not be used for someone who is actually, you know, like really shitty evil? And it's only reserved for like cute moments of like, oh, the baby's being a goober. Look at a little goob.
I mean, that's what my mom called me when I was a little boy. She still calls me goober or gooby.
Goob.
Yeah, or goob. Goob is a good one. That was just my nickname when I was a kid.
The Amazing Fleck, who is a dear friend of mine who is awesome, says it's a shame when some folks get a soapbox, they use it for an ad hominem logical fallacy instead of making intelligent, fair arguments. Yeah, it seems like it's outside of the game a lot.
Well,
to me, I'm not understanding how that moves the needle. Like if you're, God, fuck. And you know what else occurs to me on an optimistic note? When I watch that, I think like, man, if these people were awesome, this shit would be lit. Yeah. It's like, well, that's different from being like, this thing is structured badly.
Well, yeah. Well, see, that's the thing. That's why it comes into the kind of topic that we were interested in talking about today, is like the shadow integration political thing. It's like they are a representation of us. They get elected by doing all this silly, nonsensical, like ad hominem, all they do is attack each other, all this sort of stuff, because that's what we love. That's what we crave. That's what we eat up. That's what we pay attention to. That's what we vote for. And so that's what they do. Just like all this, like, we can hate on capitalism all we want, but the only reason companies like Amazon are so big is because we use them for everything. And so we can look at the people in the head of the political sphere and think, oh my God, how could these people possibly be in control? How could these possibly be the people? But, well, it's because of us, because we voted them in there, because secretly we love their sociopathic, narcissistic bullshit, because we think that's what we need and that's what we want. And we want to win. We want to have our side be the predominant thing. And the more that becomes the thing, the more that's going to be all we really give a fuck about. So it's us. It is 100% us. If we wanted something different, we would have voted something different in. We would have created something different, but we didn't want something different. We wanted this. So this is what we got.
It's interesting how much it's, so there's some people that just got sworn in recently, just got sworn January 1st. But with some of these folks have been in there for so long, and yes, they have been reelected, but it's like you're literally giving a soundboard in the present, in arguably a really consequential chamber of the present that is going to be deciding things for people in the present and future, and you're giving a microphone to the past, like not just as an old person, but like old ideas from old people. Like, and it seemed, and it's just apparent. I'm not going to say that that's bad. No, that's bad. But not as in there can't be any of that, but just to see that it's still looking mostly like to have a mostly elderly deciding body, deciding stuff about what happens to the lives and bodies of the babies. And
I don't even know if age really has anything to do with it, because you get people like AOC in, and then she's like, let's keep a list of everybody who supported Trump. And it's like, that's awful in a completely different way. So I think we just need good people.
I think that too. There's a precedent that you set by everything. It seems like right now with this impeachment, it is a fuckaroozy of a thing. It doesn't, it's and by fuckaroozy now, like there was a time where I was just playing decisively knee-jerk blue team left wing. Like that was just, it was more than a leaning. And now I would still say, what occurs to me is like the difference between like, ask me my opinion. And if I were on that floor, like if I was a congressman or a senator or in the House, I would, man, if I'm given these limited choices, I think that I would have I don't know if my percentage would be mostly for blue team, unless I was making the laws, in which case I would. But
you have to play blue team, otherwise you don't get reelected. You need to play strongly to your team, otherwise you just don't get elected.
Yeah, and that.
Are you frozen? Or are you just thinking really hard?
Happened?
Okay, there you are. Oh, are you frozen again? Or are you thinking really hard again?
I'm thinking really. I'm supposed to.
Is this me? You seem to be frozen. I seem to be moving just fine, but you seem to be frozen.
Damn it! Can you hear me shouting though in real time?
Okay, now I can. I heard the end of that.
Okay. Wonder what I should do. Okay.
I don't know.
All right.
I can hear you now.
Okay. So, what does it work like the movie Inside Out? You seen the movie Inside Out?
Oh yes.
Okay. So, does this work? Does this make sense for a visual metaphor that like the halls, that like the Senate floor is your brain, and you have all these parts of yourself that contrast with each other, and they got to try to come to an agreement so that they can get. I mean, hopefully, but with your mind, you'd want an overwhelming majority every time, or else you're like, no. But sometimes you do gotta be like, I'm 64% in on this. You know, when you make a decision on that, that's a thing that happens a lot, I'd say. Anyway, does that work as a metaphor that there's like a democracy inside of your psyche that's like, you know, making choices with all your different incentives and traumas and stuff?
No, I think it's more of a republic in the sense that you are the representative. You know, your consciousness, you are the elected representative, and it is your job to listen to, could even be a monarchy, even like a really high functioning monarchy, where you are chosen by God to be the keeper and the maintainer of your own little kingdom. And these are your subjects and your people, and you love them and you care for them. And it's essentially your job to listen to their concerns and hear what they're worried about, and not necessarily do what they tell you to do, or just like listen to them and execute their plans perfectly, but instead listen to what they're saying, listen to why they're saying it, and then make a decision based on what's best for the whole.
Yeah. And it's like, the gentleman from Deep Frustrations, them from early teenage years of feeling helpless and powerless, step forward.
You may have the floor.
Yeah. Well, I just think that this whole shit is fucked. I've always thought this whole shit is fucked. That's what you always say every time.
And the gentleman's had his say for the 3,000th time.
And are you the one who hits the gavel and is like, all right, order here. Order, come on, we all have. Or I don't know if I am. Sometimes.
Well, you should be.
Is that? Yeah, what is that then in metaphor? Like meditating, like being okay. So like, there's a lot of that I think going on. I think it's like safe to assume that the thing that I experience when there's a thing like this, and the election itself, really, that was a really bad week. And I will say since last Wednesday, a lot of I haven't had like a super bad week, because bad is relative. So nothing really bad happened to me. So but I felt, and my thoughts have been horrible since this, because when it's so pertinent, when it seems pertinent, or maybe I should just, when it seems like I'm making I could maybe make a judgment call about safety or what to do with my life. Should I try to get the fuck out of this country? You know, by watching this, that's more relevant to both of those. There was something being decided. I have no call in it. I don't have a joystick in my hand. I'm watching a screen and I'm reacting in horror to horrible things that aren't my fault, or kind of are, or
either way, you'll have to deal with them. So fault is kind of irrelevant. It's happening either way.
Deal with. And yeah, so, and deal with is so difficult on that. It's just like, I wish there was maybe we should make this. We can make like an app that just sends you notices when there's something that is definitely going to affect your life and influence decision making for sure. This is going to become pertinent information for you as far as the news. I think I know a lot of people who that's their relationship with the news.
Is it like, don't tell me about it unless it relates to me as an individual?
Unless it directly affects me. And there's, and this is one that I can't argue with unless I can do something about it, you know?
Okay. Yeah. Well, unless I can do something about it, that kind of makes sense to me. But also that's going to be pretty fucking limited.
Yeah. Well, okay. So, I remember one time my sister and me got talking, and it got shouty, but not like shouty argument, like shouty, like I feel strongly about things that I'm saying to you. Well, I definitely feel strongly about things I'm saying to you. I can't. And it was something that got mentioned, Jeffrey Epstein and
yes,
and just the prospect that there might be really sinister, evil people that are woven into government. And like that is like that. I think that thought may not have, that wasn't the first time it was presented to her verbally, but it was like this moment of like, what do I need? Why do I need to know about that? Because what am I gonna do? And then I may have had a soapbox moment of like, well, you've tried to plant your feet as firmly as you can in reality. So then if a move becomes available to you, you'll enact your values or something, you know. So I don't know what I said, but I later kind of agree where it's like, man, some of these things are really they're very large vehicles that park in your mental real estate garage, and they're fuming and they're fucking shit up, and that's meaningful and worthwhile if you're going to do something about it. But if it's just like, oh, people are being horrible far away, tell me if something gets so bad that I might want to wear a rain jacket
or get the fuck out. That's one of the main things I'm kind of tracking. Like you said a second ago, like I'm really kind of tracking, like, at what point am I certain I must leave? And then at what point am I so certain that I must leave that I might be willing to do it even if my family members don't want to come with me?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna say this in a happy tone, but I would like to discuss precisely that. Yeah, I'd say that if this thing continues, where the mass media that has the most attention are not coming down from their posts of let's accelerate these divisions and hatreds almost as much as we possibly can with our platforms, then I would say that shit will get dodgier and dodgier around here. And the rhetorical catch-22s that are there, those are abound lately, where it's like there is nothing that you can say, including, can we come together to try to just make the best result for all of us tomorrow, is like, fuck you, hippie. Or it comes from either side, in which case, like, there's Republicans on, like, you know, insincerely calling for unity now, saying let's unify and get to doing the work of the people. Biden's going to be elected. Come on, let's unify and go. And then the Democrats are saying we can only unify with accountability. And then they're saying, anyway, you know the deal. That's you know the thing. And the thing that would make me, that would signal to me as a meerkat, like popping up out of my little meerkat hole and being like, oh, okay, is there any what would make me get the fuck out of Dodge, like which would be, I'm thinking Canada, just because it's there and I like the cold more and more. It's got a really
Canada's definitely there. Like, if there's one thing I could say about it, it's that if like you look to the north, it's definitely there.
It has been there,
and it seems like it's gonna be for at least a little while.
And you can build an outdoor sauna near an icy river. Oh, I didn't say the thing. The thing that makes me give my meerkat signal to the other meerkats that there is definitely imminent danger, we need to get the fuck out of this country as soon as possible, is if they're both leaning in and if they're going to continue to turn the temperature up. But then maybe it's like, just go live on a mountain where people, because there's still this sense that it's like, when I have a freak out about things, it's like, just stay away from where there's people who think that it's worth it to fucking attack each other.
So the thing about this is, I think we're going to know pretty much, I think we'll know by the end of this month whether or not we actually have to get out. Because we've got some shit coming up on the 20th, and we've got some potential shit coming up on the 16th. Apparently, on Inauguration Day, there will be militias attacking protesting at every single state capital on Inauguration Day.
That's the word on the digital streets.
And so I think that will, by and large, give us a really strong idea of where we're at going forward. It was my original belief that a Biden win would kind of chill things out for a little bit, which it has to a certain degree. If Trump won, the people would have rioted immediately. So we got a nice little month reprieve there, which I'm grateful for. But I think by the end of this month, we will know just how hot the water we're in really is.
seeing camera phone videos from the storming of the Capitol, that there is definitely, absolutely an element. It wasn't all of them there, but that element exists. It feels so dehumanizing we're saying that element in reference to a group of people, but that was a group of people that had problems and were it's it seems always clear to me now when there's somebody who is putting themselves at such like certain doom risk and either seemingly unaware of it or totally aware of what they're risking and like willing to do it. It's like, what's that person's life like? They are willing to like, that to me is like definition of extremism. It's only catching to those who are willing to risk everything that is what we call your life, the things in your life. Get a life. I have a great life. Like that, when we say your life, you're willing to throw all that away and literally your life for an idea that you just found on the menu of ideas.
Well, I think it's a little bit more complex than that, because like, especially we're talking about all this shit coming up then on the end of the month. Like it's not just some random assortment of ideas, right? Like this is like the reason this country was created in the first place. Like the only thing to be patriotic about is the thing they're concerned with. Like, are we selling out to the next financial superpower, which, as far as I know, has already surpassed us? And so are we going to sell out and essentially let a communist country decide for us who we're going to be from here on out? Like, that's what they think they're fighting against. And to a certain degree, I think it's valid, because there's a lot you can point to. Like the NBA, the NFL, so many things just doing whatever China wants them to. Movies and things. We can't make movies nowadays if they won't play in China. We have to make certain adjustments to the media that we're making so that it can fly in a Chinese audience, and specifically so it can fly in a communist audience. So we're already tailoring ourselves largely to this communist idea and communist kind of telling us who to be and what to do so that we can do business with them. And then you have all these people that genuinely believe in the American conviction and the American ideal. And it's not only the opposite of the American ideal, but it's the destruction of the American ideal. So while there's a lot of real things that are actually happening to point to this, that's what these people think they're fighting against. And the problem is that they're right. They are right. Like, this is happening.
You say the word valid instead of right. Those are different words, and
they're right. This is happening.
Then I would disagree with that. The valid thing means that's a cogent perspective, and there's something.
I do believe it is. There's a lot of evidence for that.
To say that it's right means that there isn't. I don't know. I haven't given up on the.
Well, when you see Black Lives Matter going out, and regardless of what you think about the destruction and the riots and all sorts of things, regardless who you think started them, regardless of all that sort of stuff, and you literally see a group that has admitted to being a Marxist group by the leaders, and you see them burning down your city, like, you're gonna fight against that. Like, you're just going to do that.
When you believe that socialism evil. Yeah.
Well, socialism is
you said they're right, like that. You're assuming that what some of the more reasonable elements of the left apparently wish for. That I think that I'm no discounting that isn't possible. That things can get there can be a lot more socialistic policies. And that's just just the divide that we have from the words. Like, there's so much socialism already alive and well.
That's not what I'm saying, though. That's not what I'm saying they're right about. I didn't say that. You just added that.
No, you said okay, but you said that once you presented that this is their fear, and then you said they're right. When you're right about a fear, that means you're the one calling out something that is going to fall upon.
Well, both people are right about what they're saying. Like, both sides are right. That's the whole reason for the whole shadow integration thing, is both sides are right. Both terrible things that they say are happening are happening. And if you were to go with only one solution, you would have left over the problem that it creates. This is why integration is essential. Because to a large degree, the American ideal and any sense of patriotism whatsoever is being completely destroyed and replaced with an entirely different sentiment that's basically inherently anti-American. And if you're like me and you love America and what it stands for, that's a big fucking problem.
I'm not sure if I'm just having a severe stoner brain moment, or if I'm not, or if I'm having a new thing presented about your personal opinions.
I'm a very patriotic person. I love this country. I carry an American flag in my back pocket every single day.
Oh, I love some of the things about it, but I also, man, this is why the public sphere of conversation is I think that it's doing me not good sometimes, having an awareness and regard for all the sides and what they think. Certainly, if I wanted to be any sort of like performer,
I do want to reflect to you that as our conversations have kept going, you seem to be going further and further to the left.
You think?
I haven't really recently heard you have any positive regard for anything on the right recently.
I think plenty.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think that the conversation has been entirely fucked. I mean, my definition of Trump derangement syndrome is that it's so much more difficult to have an unbiased thought when you're so divided by someone. I mean, like, have you ever heard anybody have like a neutral, the unfazed opinion of him?
I mean, I kind of don't really care either way.
Huh?
I kind of don't really care either way. That's kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah, but see, it makes it so that signaling that, see, I think that most of the virtues, when stated as virtues that I hear from left and right, they come across as really important things in how to orchestrate a life and perhaps a country. I think we all have to realize that it's an unwinnable game at figuring out the perfect way to do this, not for a small place where everybody agrees to be there, but anyway, that a lot of the right-wing concepts that name a bunch. I am so stoned right now and so having such a stupid brain day, to be honest. Before this, I was like, I do not feel the enthusiasm to talk about the political part of this. I would like to get into the part of the self and stuff, because
I actually wondered if you were going to even come on today. My intuition for some reason was like, I have a feeling Zach's going to say we're not doing this today, but you didn't.
And for that, I would only reward myself emotionally. Zakery, you did good today, if not for this moment where I'm verbally taking up airtime saying that I don't feel well. Thing about this conversation is, I think about the stuff that I'll say now, trying to be, because I'm almost being political now when I talk. When I talk publicly, because I think it's so bad for us pragmatically to turn the heat up anymore, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So being as I see that as like this our problem right now. So we need to get things to a place where we can move on them, where we can make little moves. And now I understand the whole the left wing, right wing dichotomy and all and the virtues of either, and the dangers are, as were before. I would have just absolutely, I was unadulteratedly, unapologetically leftist, and didn't even get the virtues over here, and had the thing that a lot of us have, the mass mental illness, is that we think the other side is insane, not wrong, not that they have a different method of how to get to a brighter day for us and our babies, but that they're evil and or insane, and or insane, or no, insane and or evil. I would say not everybody thinks that the other side is entirely evil, but crazy, seeing a different world, delusional, hallucinating a reality.
Yeah, it used to be that the meme was like, for right-wing people, it was like, you think we're evil, we just think you're wrong. And then it has devolved in the last few years to like, nope, both sides just think the other side is just fucking evil.
And I do think that old boy with the face and the hair really did help with that. Like really accelerated that. And I think that's some psychological shit. I think that it's there's an optimistic thing to take from this for sure, is that look how consequential one person can be.
Mm-hmm.
And how much and what leadership does. Leadership can take all of these desires and fears within millions of people and like just really aggregate the craziest, most dangerous of those groups, or the most like kind and intelligent and responsible and competent and like ready to step up to the plate fucking helpers and heroes. Like I really think it can do that. It also, there's some things that I've witnessed in in movements that I've at some point marched with in the past, including like right after the George Floyd videos. I went to marching a few times, and one of the big reasons why I felt I can't bring myself to this anymore was like the different flags of different things that were not about what the original intention of protesting was, which was protecting the lives of Black people killed by police. There were so many banners that had nothing to do with that, and it just that seeing that happen and seeing that's the way it went with Occupy. Though I wasn't really aware of that then. I could look back and I'd be like, wait, that has nothing. We're talking about 99%. It's like you don't have to go full Marxist. But at the time I would have been down with that. Anyway, where did I forgot who I am. I think there's a difference between now being in the chess game that I observed, that like anything that you can do that actually sincerely helps with the signal that we're all here and trying to produce the best outcomes with being here and having these irreconcilable differences on some things, but there's so much agreement. Is like that's being tracked actually quite a bit. There's so much agreement about the big important stuff.
Yeah, I legitimately think most of it is just due to the media. Like I know that's a very like, it's just so weird to me to even say this, that people can like discount your talking points just because it's something that right-wing people say. Like, have you heard that before? Like you'll say something, maybe this only happens to me, but like you'll say something and people will be like, oh, that's just a right-wing talking point. It's like, no, it's a fucking idea that I just came up with. Like, this is my general opinion. And a lot of people will like try and be like, oh, that's just a right-wing thing. Or like, oh, that's just a left-wing thing. Like, as in like, just like, that's how strong the divide is. Like, because some people on that side of the thing believe this, that just because it's associated with them, I won't even give it a chance. Mm-hmm. And that's how a lot of the shit looks to me. And I think the media is largely responsible for that, which, you know, has me curious about why, and you get into a lot of ideas there. But what I largely see is, because like I've been tracking this from the very beginning. Like I started noticing the division before Trump even showed up on the scene. I started noticing, because I think Trump showed up as a result of the division.
Well, sure,
that's my read. I don't think he caused the division. I think he showed up because of it.
But do you think he was made possible? His ascension was made possible by the division, and only
so here's my read on it, which is going to be a very unpopular read for people who generally tend to lean more to the left side of it. But my read on it, because I was actively paying attention at the time, because the first thing that I noticed was feminism. The first thing I noticed was this more shame-based kind of like predatory version of feminism starting to show up. And it was creating a lot of conflict and a lot of back and forth, and it was really polarizing people, and that you were either one of these people that agreed with this or you were one of these people that was vehemently against it. And that's the first division that I really started to notice. And then as that got more and more heated, people were like, you should feel really bad. And people were like, well, I'm not going to feel fucking bad. You should shut the fuck up. And like, it's like, well, you're making me feel bad. You should take care of my feelings. It's like, well, you should take care of your own fucking feelings. And so like this whole thing just kind of spiraled more and more out of control. And as things were already heated and the left was like really pushing back on everybody to be like, you need to be what we say you need to be. You need to care about our feelings more than your own expression. You need to like cater to us and blah, 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 this whole like devouring mother thing. As you embody the devouring mother more and more, all you can really expect in return is the tyrannical father. Like that's how archetypes work. Like you lean too far into one and you get the other. Like that's just a natural result of things. And so to me, what I started to notice was this like really intense thing coming from over here from the left side, and then people needed a ballast against that, and Trump was the perfect ballast against that. He was the guy that would say all the things they told you not to say. He would do all the things that they told you not to do. He was the embodiment of like everything that they told you that you couldn't be anymore, which isn't good things. Like, but that for me is the big distinction, because it's one thing to say that nobody anywhere should ever be, think, do, or say any of these bad things, or we like that. He's what happens when you try to repress the bad stuff. You get a Trump. So to me, it's cause and effect. It's predictive, or it's predictable. And I do honestly think it was largely started by people who tried to stamp out the shadow, which was the left people.
You use the phrase predatory feminism, which part of my brain was like, oh, this is an inflammatory boy.
Well, it's a thing. It's a part of it. You can't not say that. You can't say it's not a part of it.
No, when I heard Sam Harris had a podcast a few ones back, man, he's been fucking livid for a while, and that's man, it's spooky to observe someone who's I wouldn't call Sam Harris on the fringe at all, but he said some things that caused some divisions at times, and so he occupies a corner of not mainstream, and to have that voice being like, this is going to be bad, this is not funny, this is going to end terribly, this entire time, and now this happening. But ourselves as well. Okay, addressing what you just said of that being the cause and effect, but doesn't it kind of like sway forever? Like so I mentioned Sam Harris because I think he knocked it out of the park about what Trumpism is archetypally, psychologically, is that it's like you've been shamed for so long, and you've been like there's just been this element of people of the psyche that is just so shamed and repressed, and so like there's so many things that have to be forced down into the catacombs. You can't be that or say that in the public square anymore, and there's so many people who embody the fuck out of that. I know so many fucking in my life I have known like folks who in their not drunk, let alone in their unhinged, like they are offensive stuff saying machines. Like it's just gonna happen because that's just kind of what they do. That just they go around and they make observations that are fucking crude. And it's not like he's not an evil guy, but he's there and he's obnoxious. And so you shame and bottle that up, and tell it to go down into the catacombs of reality for I don't know how many years. That was a trend for quite a bit. I remember a time where I felt like my psyche was being fucked up a lot by the amount of public shame about things that that none of the blood was on my hands. And that like and someone like with a setup like me internalizes guilt from that. Others get more like, what the fuck are you saying? I fucking do any. I'm not responsible for any of that.
That's still guilt though.
Sure. But so the guilting is happening, and how the guilt is being felt, that there's a lot of guilt and shame. And then he comes along and he's Sam Harris said that he's grabbing by the pussy Jesus. He's like here to he's the salvation of all who felt all of that shame and guilt coming from the left, as you say. But I like, man, what do people mean when they say that? Do they mean people who come from the left, or are we saying like the left?
Well,
hemisphere of the brain of God. Is that
a sincere question?
Is it both?
No, it's clearly people from the political left.
No, but it's also a part of from yourself. If you're feeling the guilt about it, it means that you think that they're onto something.
So yeah, for sure, because they are. Like, and that's the problem with this. Like, that's why you can't ever stamp out the shadow. That's exactly why, is because they are onto something. And there's two ways you can deal with being onto something. You can try and repress it and stamp it out, which will make it 10 times stronger and make it hate you, which doesn't seem fruitful as a long-term goal, or you can try to understand it, find common ground, and work with it, in which case that creates integration, it creates harmony, it creates balance, it creates something good. And the people on the left chose the first option. They chose to try and stamp it out. They tried to act like they don't have it in them. They tried to act like they were better than it. They tried to act like you literally could just stamp all this stuff out. And they had the media supporting them. They had everybody supporting them, saying this is like the best thing in the world. Yes, queen, go ahead, go for it. And that became our culture. And so this is what you can expect when you turn your culture into something like that. It's just cause and effect.
I mean, what could be called the right has been pervasive for more of American history. So
yeah, but they weren't doing this shit until they were provoked.
Yeah, but that's the bottling up. That's the bottling up that made the left side all bottled up to the point where they went and did all the guilt and the shame, and then the pussy grabbing Jesus came.
I don't know what happened, man, because as far as I could tell, those like all the like really shitty, weird, dorky people that like are actually problems in the right, like they were, as far as I knew, they were just kind of like in their own communities, just being kind of shitty. They weren't really causing any major problems in the country. But then you try and stamp them out like that's even possible, and suddenly they start causing really big problems.
And I wonder how many problematic penguins there are who may waddle to their capitals. Like, is that because I'll be entirely honest, and sometimes I feel like a tad vulnerable about just having public record of my saying what I thought in the moment of something that is going to be history, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my immediate reactions to these things, because I don't tend to come on here and be my emotional, like, you know, really unguarded, like feeling the feeling self. But I will expose this though. I have been genuinely very, very, very afraid in the last at numerous points in the last 4 years, but particularly in heating up to the election. During that time, I feel like I was very made unwell by the election, and last week did fuck me up, and now, and thinking about the time between now and inauguration, like just from analyzing the video of the Capitol storming moments, and just a whole life of observing that mob madness is real dangerous. And
so let me ask you something. Does one bother you more than the other?
Which?
Does seeing people storm a Capitol, which is a problem, clearly a bad thing, I'm not saying it's not, but does that bother you more or less than seeing a group of people throw Molotov cocktails into a police precinct with cops inside of it?
It's like our veering into this is like more evidence to me that it's deeply set in, and we're going to need something really catastrophic in order to get to the point where
well, that's why I'm asking. I'm curious, like, because it seems like one occurs to you as a problem more than the other.
I will say this, that my honest answer, like stripped of all biases and leanings, is violence from the right frightens me more because of their capabilities, and particularly weaponry, and more paralegal, paramilitary. Oh, that okay. That wasn't even that funny. Yeah, that there's folks with tactical gear and tactical knowledge and weaponry like that. Yeah, that worries me more. And because of the archetypal side of the self that they tend to embody more, there's just more big scary meanies who know how to do stuff, you know? So that's the thing that worries me now, is where when I was watching the riots, it was really, I was worried about a moment like the Kyle Rittenhouse moment, and then it happened. I was worried about precisely that. There keeps being this thing where like the best thing I can say is could have been worse. Like there's a lot of could have been worse about the Capitol storming. There was a lot of things that almost happened and didn't, and we would be in a very different spot right now if they would have got on the Senate, I mean the chamber floor. Oh man, that could have been like just, but I wonder what is the reaction to some of these things that seem plausible now. Like there's been this steady escalation. I hate being spooky like this, but I just like this is what we're doing. We're spitballing, and man, some of the hypotheticals that are going through my head about because I've met that element before. I know that there's some people who really believe it, and what they've been fed and how much the temperature has been turned up, and like how much of that is entirely intentional. Like QAnon, definitely at this point, don't you think? It definitely seems like some sort of very intentional psyop thing. It's not just somebody being creative on the internet. It's like somebody who was like, this makes it so that.
I don't know. I mean, I am kind of willing to believe that it was just a 4chan troll that got way out of hand. Because it did come from 4chan. And most of the things I know about 4chan are that they just troll really fucking hard to see what they can get away with and see what they can get people to believe. And so to me, this looks like it could have just been that. I don't know. I clearly don't know. But if I were to make a guess, I'd be like, somebody trolled hard and it got away from them.
Yeah.
But I want to address this comment here from that Hope said, violence from the right is more rooted in generational wounds of white supremacy and tend to have the lean. And see, that is, I think, to me, a perfect example of how the media completely screws these things.
That is our reality, Chris.
It is, but to say that it's more rooted in that completely disregards all the people who don't believe in those things that have valid concerns.
Yeah,
when you can wrap it all up into white supremacy, you can put people in a box and put them away and never listen to them because you can say that their concerns are rooted in white supremacy. It's entirely too convenient.
But because there's, let's even say 12 that are, or maybe 12,000 at that rally. Maybe, well, I don't know how many people were at that. No, definitely not 12,000. But anyway, like when you see a Confederate flag waving there and they got the guy with the Camp Auschwitz hoodie, like everyone knows that reality exists. It's like, okay, so
does the hammer and sickle flag and eat the rich. Like they're the same to me.
Sure. And it turns people like me away from being able to interact with that to a certain level, because it's like, I can't march next to this. I don't agree with that part.
And that's why you can't wrap it all up into white supremacy. That's how you create these things. That's how you turn it into a series of ideas and people to engage with into being an unconscious part of your shadow that will eventually take you over. Like that's like, it's really important to draw that distinction.
Yes. But the part of leanings of law enforcement on their side, that's not as hyper evident as the media is portraying it, because that's the narrative they're running with. And either side totally does the thing where it's like, okay, we got a narrative. We're fucking all, and everything that backs that, we are not presenting like, but that it is real. Like you say to almost any American who isn't just ready to deflect that, are there more? Yeah. How many white supremacist cops do you think you are? Or do you?
Well, I mean, it depends on how you take a look at it. Like, yeah, you're going to have more right-leaning people actually on the force. But then when you take a look at what happened over the summer, is you had people rioting in Portland for 90 days straight, and the government refusing to do anything about it. So it's like, sure, this whole idea that one side has the cops more on their side, it's like, I don't buy any of that.
It is a fuckaroozy of a thing right now that we are in much agreement of that there is. And I wonder what it's going to take. What would it take to get people to be pragmatic about, like, hey, I know we've done well, or to have people jump track. Like, that's what I think of right now is the most perfect time for a formation of not one, but two. I think two new parties need to be made, because the Republicans and Democrats are both corrupt beyond rescue. I think we could all say it. Like, and I want like sane conservatism in America to have a voice and to have an apparatus that aggregates the best of its best talkers and thinkers and responsible people to come forward and do the thing that democracy is supposed to be. I also want that of the rational left. I want the thing to be happening. But also I think, like, how are we ever going to avoid like this moment where being bifurcated on everything, having two like, how do you avoid that becoming so conflicty that it's like a war? There needs to be three. There needs to be several. There needs to be a council. You can't just be two. Because then all of the tyrannical rush to the side, and all of the devouring mother has to go this way, and they just part. As opposed to like, what if there was a constitutional party And well, there already is, but like,
Well,
but
it's like any given human being has their masculine side and their feminine side. And essentially, mental health to a certain degree can largely be defined as the balancing between those two forces. And our political system largely corresponds to more feminine concerns versus more masculine concerns. So it's fairly safe to separate us along those lines. And that's the same kind of internal makeup as an individual. An individual will have these two polar opposite forces that are pulling them in opposite directions all the time. And in order to stay in a sense of health and equilibrium, you have to constantly balance between the concerns of the healthier, more integrated parts of your masculine or feminine side and the more fringy, repressed versions. So it's, to me, it's kind of a perfect one-to-one mirror of our internal world. Like, I don't really see a problem with it.
I have several selves, several, not two.
But they're always gonna fall into either category.
Okay. Hope says, not trying to put anyone in a box. I'm just saying to ignore the generational roots here isn't showing the depth of the issue. To that, I will say, in this comment says, there's this deep rooted seed of power, I think, and violence is the only way to make their power a reality. There is a group of people that, you know, without having any, you don't have to have any sympathy for them. I think that the appropriate emotional reaction to them is something like pity or disgust. But there are a group of people that you just have to know that their reality tunnel that they're in is that they're being like cleared away, like genocided, and it's actually several do.
Yeah, that's white genocide has been a thing for a very, very, very long time, and to a certain degree, it is true. Like, we are going to get to a point where there are no just pure white people anymore. Like, I don't really care about that.
Yeah, I have zero sympathy for it, but just to know that like that it might be the case that the guy with the gun is like that, and having a purge of that is a really like.
But even then, man, it's like I have sympathy for it because I'm also part Japanese, and I love Japanese culture and Japanese heritage. And if that were to be wiped from the face of the planet, I would really feel a loss. And so the fact that the Japanese people are so insistent on their nationalism and maintaining a sense of national identity and a cultural identity, granted, ours is newer, but we still do have an American culture, and it makes sense to want to preserve that. Now, assigning a skin tone to that, that's too far. You lose me at that point. But nationalism as a whole, which people are kind of trying to stamp out, which is kind of like this whole global perspective, which I agree to a certain extent, but I still want there to be a Japanese culture. I still want there to be an Irish culture. I still want there to be an Italian culture. I still want there to be an American culture. I still want there to be cultures. And nationalism is part of how you present it, how you preserve that. And I think American culture is a goddamn beautiful thing. We're the fucking Western cowboys of the world. Like, it's awesome. And I want to preserve that. I don't think you have to have a skin tone associated with it. But for people to want to fight back and maintain our cultural identity, like, I don't really see a problem with that.
Yeah, but what they're fighting for is holding a white an ethnic identity to a country.
Sure.
By design,
but this is me extending to find a middle ground. This is me saying there's a middle ground with them, and we can find it. And it's worth at least trying.
Now you're talking about actually approaching an individual and having them have mental health treatment, baby steps. Like,
no. I'm saying you're concerned about this. I'm concerned about part of what you're concerned about. Let's work together. Because that's what it would really look like. That's what unity actually looks like. If you say you want unity, that's what it looks like.
Okay, that's not coming from those who are on the victim side of that of history, and it's not like that's.
I'm not talking about right or wrong. I'm just talking about if you want unity, you're gonna have to have some really fucking hard conversations with some really fucking difficult people.
And they're just possessed by. I think I wonder about that, and I've seen there's like a couple people who were previously members of hate groups, and then. Not only had their Ebenezer Scrooge redemption story, but then spent the rest of their life going around giving talks about why it's bad to end up in a hate group and how it's preying upon sick, sad, lonely people. But what about those who actually are attracted to that? that sometimes there's just the possibility of, you ever just met somebody who's just fucking not trying and not
Sure, and those people exist, but I'm not
stupid?
going to use them as a reason to give up.
Yeah, but okay, so I think this is the difference, and this is why in this particular episode, it seems like I disagree with you more than, because my mind goes to like the idea always, and not the people, and I get confused at like that. I think that most minds are gonna think we're talking about the people, and the people, that's always true, and you can always get to like bring it to the psychological level and be like, this is a person who needs help, but you know, with something that exists as a meme and an understanding of a real fucking boil that needs to be lanced of white supremacy in America, I think that it is a time to unite against that, and then as much as utopian and how nice it sounds.
If you want to make it stronger, that's a great way to do it. You can't unite against ideas, man. It's the shadow. You put it into the shadow and it gets stronger. You can only integrate them. You cannot stamp out ideas. It cannot be done.
How do you integrate the idea? I almost don't want to ask you that question.
Well, this is the whole thing, man. If you and I have been talking about creating unity through shadow integration, you've been completely misunderstanding me if this is surprising to you, because this is what I've been talking about from the very beginning.
I get that on a personal level, but there's almost no way to talk about this right now, and I almost want to just declare that there's no way to talk about that without it, because it only works as a metaphor. If you're
No, it's very real.
No, it doesn't meet the situation at all.
Daryl Davis is a perfect example of this.
I know that, but there's also just psychosis that has a logo. Like, that's what
Sure.
neo-Nazism is. Neo-Nazism isn't people.
Neo-Nazis is a lot of people that, it's sure, there's that to a degree, but there's also just a lot of lost, wayward people that didn't have anywhere else to go.
That's exactly what I'm saying. But the idea itself, you have to treat it like fucking Sauron.
No, you don't.
It is Sauron attaching itself to people.
No,
the idea is bad.
No. If you look at the idea as bad, you will never be able to integrate it. You cannot look at a single part of yourself or any idea you've ever had as bad if you want to create long-term sustainable mental health.
Dude, I will rephrase if we are that, because I'm hoping you're misunderstanding me. I'm saying that it is the move to see Nazism, the right-facing swastika, and things like Confederate flags, but with the intention of signaling racial superiority and applauding genocide. That idea is bad. It is. Sure.
But if you want to create unity in the world, you have to simply see it as a series of unmet needs.
But maybe we're having a semantical. This is a words thing. Yeah, I agree in terms of that. If there's somebody who has, like, I remember there was a person with a crudely, I have my person with a crudely applied swastika tattoo that I made friends with around a bonfire. He was homeless, and then that was revealed, and I was gonna give him a place to stay that night at my parents', but then it was revealed that he had this, and it was just like, hey man, like, I think that you're recovered, but I can't have you at my house. That was just one anecdote, but yeah, in terms of an individual who literally has a stamp and has an ideological possession, like, yeah, like, having compassion for that person is the only way you're going to get it out of them. But in the society, like, definitely, I think we can stomp that out. Do you think the Germany was wrong?
Look what happens when we tried. We failed miserably.
I don't know what happens when we don't try.
You have when you try and stomp that shit out, you have a bunch of people about to attack every state's capital. We tried. We got the results. This is what you get.
So what are you saying? Said to have like free therapy for people who are.
So look, this comment here from this guy Hans Christopher is exactly what people. It could not embody any better what people hear when I say what I say and how different it is than what I'm saying.
I hope I'm hearing you wrong, because I disagree really hard. And
I think you are hearing me wrong, because most people don't really hear what I'm trying to say. It's just like I get into these like Jordan Peterson scenarios where I say stuff and people hear what they want to hear, and then they treat me as if I said what they made it mean, and that's not really the case.
I am giving you a chance to re-say in a way that doesn't.
He's all upset. He's all
Yeah.
he's
I know Hans is great. Hans is a great dude.
but he's yelling at me. It's hilarious.
What you are saying is a very particular thing. Talking about something that has a logo, that has a fucking magic symbol.
All right, give me a chance. So there's no unity with genocidal ideas. What exactly? Okay, so okay, so people who don't really know what
You have an
hold on, just let me answer. So people who don't really seem to know much about integration seem to think that when I say you can integrate these ideas, that what they say is that like, okay, it's okay to commit genocide on some people. Sometimes genocide is fine. We should commit genocide sometimes. That's what people hear when I say this. And it's, if you know anything about me, if you've ever read a single thing I've ever written or ever had a conversation with me, you would know that that is absolutely ludicrous. And I would never say that. Instead, what I always say is if you are to the point where you think genocide is a good idea, you've got some serious pain going on underneath. You've got something to be addressed. And if we can figure out what the fuck is going on under the hood that's got you that far gone and deal with that, your genocidal impulses will disappear.
And having that banner out there to prey upon people who are in that position and that unhealthy to the point where they are susceptible to that kind of extremism, I think making an effort to stamp that out is and can be helpful.
You will make it stronger. That's how the shadow works. If you try and stamp out an idea, you will make it stronger 10 times out of 10.
I don't know if that metaphor works on the Mass Effect. I mean, I don't know how to. I mean, this is
what happened. We tried to do it. We tried to stamp it out over the last 4 years, and we made it 10 times stronger. This, you can watch it on the world stage. It's happening right now.
White supremacy, man.
I know. And look what happened. And look what happened. We tried to stamp it out, and then you got a Camp Auschwitz guy stomping the Capitol. You got the results.
An observation I have about that element is that its recruitment mechanisms require a mentally ill, lost, lonely, or just dejected, that they really preys upon people and who have a shitty situation.
No, Hans, your understanding of my words are different. I'm very clear in what I say. I'm very clear in what I say.
I don't get it this time, man, because I'm talking about like that logo, that particular thing. In the same way that I think that I mean, I don't know what you do about it because he rose in a pseudo-democratic process, but like having a Donald Trump, like that particular face, that particular persona inflames people to a point that it's dangerous. I mean, and to an extent, we as a collective, psyche, like kind of chose it. Like, that's why this has been part
because we tried to stomp it out. That's what led us to choose it, is the trying to stamp it out. That's to the point you just made about what Sam Harris said. That's exactly why we picked him.
People who have immense fervent, like can't see any, because we're talking about a different thing with it. That's the thing that I understand fully. And I think that if we were just having this conversation, not publicly, this part wouldn't have even happened. Because I just know that when this is said, it's assumed we're talking about, it can't separate the idea from the people. My mind does that, but still, like that particular Nike swoosh fucking.
But ideas can only be held by people. You cannot separate ideas from people. You cannot do it.
What do you think about Germany's choice to have that be a flat out law? There can be,
and then it's rising again anyway. It doesn't work.
But do you know? And then what would?
Integration. What I've been saying this entire goddamn time.
How does that look with a person though? You're talking about going to these people, like the very, like the threat of the movie Joker that upset some folks, but I thought that it was a beautifully made threat where it's like, if these people do not get love, if this individual does not have someone reach out to them, they're gonna go fucking nuclear. Like,
if we have all of this time to spend shaming them and coming up with memes and doing all kinds of ridiculous things to shame these people and constantly compete to see who can one up them better and who can shame them into the ground better, yes, we can revert that energy to do something helpful. It requires us getting off of our fucking asses.
I agree with that. But I think that there's something where it's like, be careful how you, I have no problem saying that, like, specifically the mental malware of Nazism, or something that would compel somebody to wave a Confederate flag, knowing the context that has around here. Fuck that. You could be on fuck that. Now, what I will agree with you on is that it would be much more effective at that having less people. Like that idea would have less people if the energy spent being like, fuck that, that's awful, you're evil, was spent doing something more constructive in terms of the like what would help with mass mental health or an individual's mental health. Like I agree. I think that we would agree that those ideas can attach themselves to an integrated person. And I know that that's ultimately what you mean when you say these things. But I fucking, as on the macro, not metaphor, like motherfucking reality. You yourself have said like you have an anti swastika, anti-Nazi like pin. Or
I don't wear it anymore. I did in middle school, but I've evolved beyond that. I don't have a middle school mentality anymore.
Oh, I thought you were just saying it's on your belt buckle the other day. Because I actually think that like when I see somebody who's like wearing a garment, it's like, so you decided to have a swastika on you. It's like, but it's crossed out. It's saying against. But well, you decided to have like you decided that you were going to go around
a punk thing. It's a dead Kennedys, Nazi punks, fuck off thing. It's a punk rock thing.
Which I get it. It's just it's very it's just interesting the difference between you predicate yourself on being for a good or against a bad. And I agree with you on that it's like that stuff would have way less of a footing in this world if we were doing things to optimize ourselves and the society, for sure. I definitely agree with that.
And the stamping out does not work. I don't even encourage anybody to do this because it won't work. It'll make your mental health way worse. But see if you can stamp an idea out of your head. See if you can do it. See what happens. See if that idea doesn't get stronger, more dangerous, and eventually take you over. Just try it. See what happens.
Hans got to agreeing with you by it. Okay, that is good. Addressing the roots of white supremacist mentality is effective. The language you're using evokes quite a different thing. I think that was just a thing where conversationally that was said weird. And how many times on this program have I been like, wait, Chris, fuck you. Like, and I still think that by playing it back, it's like that just could have been arrived. I think it's just that you need to make it obvious when you're dealing with these sort of metaphors, because I don't blame somebody for just tuning in and being like, is he saying it's okay to like, that's how people are wired right now. And my mind realizes that. And I am, there's,
if I had to cater to that every single time I open my mouth, I'd never say anything.
Not every time, but what have we been talking about lately? Like having strategy of how it affects things. I don't know. We're not on the floors of the Senate. We're not like, and I think I didn't finish that statement earlier. Like what I would say if you said like, what are your political leanings, Zakery? Like, what do you like? I'm going to respond differently now because I know the context. And in this context, I think that bringing the temperature down to a place where positive changes can be made is so important, because I think that as this escalates, we're just going to be dealing with the last crisis. We're just like all of the airwaves are going to be taken out by the last Capitol storming session. We're creating controversies instead of fixing the problems that we have. And the problems that we have are massive, and they're absolutely going to take cooperation at some level. But anyway, if I was just there voting, and because the game is that I would be either red team or blue team, I wonder if I would be able to stand up, or if the strategy of it, the politics, would cause me to be just as cowardly seeming as these folks that I see on C-SPAN. There are some exceptions. There every now and then I'll see somebody who it's like, that's an entire person who is using their entire brain to do what they were sent here to do, which is represent a bunch of people, even knowing like almost 50-50. That they're not representing everybody. They're representing an element that got them sent there.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fucksy daisy of a position.
Yeah. After having all these conversations with you, I thought of a new word within this last hour, and it's the fuckeronomicon. And I think we are all reading chapters every day from the collective fuckeronomicon.
Fuckeronomicon?
Mm-hmm.
What's that?
It's I just made it up. It's like, the Necronomicon.
Necronomicon, yeah.
Yeah, this is the fucked version of that. It's the book we are all reading from collectively. The Fuckeronomicon.
Oh, yeah. How do we fuck things the most? Well, that's what absurdism is, right? Like right now, absurdism as a philosophy is coming true, right?
I guess kind of, in a very bizarre sense. Even though I don't really think I guess it is odd sense of meaning we're pursuing. We're just getting it from strange places.
Look, you and Hans had a considerable moment where you thought you were disagreeing, and now found a thing that you guys agree upon thoroughly. And Hans discussed it because we bring up Daryl Davis on this program quite often. Makes me think of the black musician who took the time to go to Klan rallies and made friends with KKK members and helped many of them through their former ways. It sounded like that's what you're getting at, and then gave an NPR of Daryl Davis. Yeah, Daryl Davis is an example of like that I think is the way, but I think it's very important, just like with the temperature now, and just I know I've seen the memosphere, especially that from some youngsters who maybe don't have as much context. I shouldn't say that. That's like, man, Coleman Hughes is like, I idolize his capability to say the things in my head in a way that is like, you know, both diplomatic and precise. That guy articulates my politics really, really well often. So does Andrew Yang, but he's 24. How does that feel when you see somebody who's way younger than you, who's killing it in a lane that you wish to kill it in?
That's never happened to me.
Because the lane that you're trying to kill it in is not one that people younger than you are killing it in, or you're creating a new lane.
Yeah, I kind of made my own lane. I even had to make up the title for my lane. There is no one else in my lane.
Blazing the trail, doing that shadow.
I'm on the motherfucking Autobahn, baby. I'm good to go.
So yeah, integrating the shadow, like talking about collective shadow work. To bring this, we got to land the ship. We got 15 minutes. That was that was like the scene in Inglourious Bastards that infuriates me. I'm not like, man, if Quentin Tarantino were here, I'm sure he has good reasoning, but the basement scene took up so much of the movie, and God, I wanted more moments of the bastards doing the thing, killing the Nazis. Speaking of killing Nazis,
the Nazis.
But yeah, you know, that scene was so long. But anyway, we just like sidetrack over what ended up being just a semantic way you're wording it disagreement thing. Okay, so to shadow work about I would definitely say that you don't do collective shadow work or your own, because you gotta look at some stuff of reality that is fucking horrific.
Then that's the thing. Like you were talking about, like certain people shouldn't be expected to have these conversations and blah blah because they're so sensitive and all sort of stuff. It's like, well, I'm talking about shadow work. Like there's nothing comfortable, there's nothing convenient, there's nothing fair, there's nothing pleasant about it. It's an unpleasant, unfair, daunting, terrible thing that you really wish you didn't have to take on, and by all means really shouldn't have to, but if you want the world to get better, you have to take it on.
It's like it's an umbrella, no, not just umbrella. What's it when you have what Hulk Hogan has in that movie where he comes from the future? A force field. Why would that?
I know, it could have been anything, but Hulk Hogan.
There's a movie where he's from the future. He's a commando. Anyway, awesome. There's like a force field around conversation of shadow work that is like the anti safe space trigger warning sort of thing. It is to enter this vortex. Is that the goal? Is we're trying to invoke things that feel bad because there is a golden prize for feeling bad about the truth, which is that it will find its way into a more settled, integrated place amongst
that. And the most important thing, I think, especially based on this conversation that we had here, is that if you don't do it, if not only you don't do it, but then especially if you go that extra step further and try to get rid of whatever part of you is causing the problems and stamp it out, you will make it stronger. You will make it more dangerous, and it will eventually come for you when you're too tired to fight back.
The closest I can get to agreeing with that on the particular thing that we were disagreeing about a bit ago is that if we could conspire to make things like stars and bars or swastika white supremacy in America, like if we all conspired to make that element go the fuck away, like as a meme, as a logo, as a fucking magic symbol that attracts certain fucked consciousnesses to latch on.
Never do it
when they have nothing else. What I'm saying, if we could conspire against it, then the way would be to go to the people who currently have any sympathy for that and help them as individuals. because they will fucking totally throw their fucking clan robe into a burning heap of other ones as soon as they are integrated humans in any way. I would agree with that.
Also, you have to let everybody else who still wants to fly those things, who isn't ready to change, you have to let them do it. If they hurt somebody, that's against the law. If they break the law, you have to punish them for it. But if they're not willing to change and they still want to wear the terrible things and say the terrible things and be the terrible things
every so often and become memes of the person who got punched in public.
That's just more repression. Again, like, it's up to you what you want to do. Conflicts, like, cause and effect. Really up to you. You can repress your shadow. That'll have a certain effect. You can punch it in the face. You can do that. Or you can do the other thing. Really all depends on what kind of result you want to have.
So right now it's this I will in 2 weeks from now I may feel very different about this. It's like I'm gonna have to we're gonna find out.
Because even when that face punching thing happened, the guy that got punched, Richard Spencer himself, was saying to people, "Thank you. You are drawing more people to our arms than we could have ever made on our own."
Was that like the moment that made him famous?
Getting punched is what made him famous. It's the Streisand effect. You punch a guy, suddenly everybody knows who he is. Next thing you know, he's recruiting like a motherfucker.
Barbara Streisand?
Yeah, it's called the Streisand effect. Back in the day, she didn't want anybody to know about this house that she was either selling or just moved into. And somebody made a story about it, and it was very, very not that big of a deal. But she made a huge deal out of it, and then suddenly the thing that she didn't want, which was for people to know where she's living, suddenly everybody knew where she was living because she made such a big deal out of it. So it's called the Streisand effect. And so when you punch a guy like that and he becomes headline news, next thing you know, everybody that thinks like him knows where to go.
I would like to use a better phrase than "I can't blame," but I can't blame people for feeling that they're being.
I can't either, but I'm more interested in results. Like
sure. But I still will maintain united against something as inarguably grotesque as white supremacy in America is better than not having anything to unite.
From a moral perspective, sure. And from like a what people are going to like to hear perspective, absolutely. But from a what's actually going to cause results, I disagree. One is more pleasant. One will actually get you somewhere.
But and so the question of how to get unity, I don't know other than a catastrophe that brings people to their knees enough where they're like, wow, we're here and we need to figure out how to move the needle in ways that we can agree are better, because this thing where we're just gridlocked all the time because of our irreconcilably trying to we will never have agreements on these things, and we are really sucking at compromise, that I don't want to fuck around and find out what those grave circumstances are if we're not already in them right now.
Well, that's exactly my point, is that I think we're in these grave circumstances because we tried to stamp it out, and this is what you get as a result.
Stamp it.
Yeah, the bad stuff. Racism, sexism, all the stuff we'd rather not have. When you try and stamp it out, like, this is literally exactly what you get. I saw this coming from a mile away. I saw this coming from 5 years ago.
But we're saying we can use a different verb than stamp it out, but we're saying that we do want to stamp it out, but in the way that actually does stamp it out, which
I don't think you can, man. You're talking about the human shadow.
We're having the same disagreement about words now. It's for
but you can't stamp it out. Somebody has to be the shadow. You will always have a shadow. You will always have one. It needs to be respected and it needs to be allowed to exist, but it cannot be allowed to harm people.
So you're saying that there being, and I keep going to the word element, there being an element of poor, unfortunate souls who really shitty intellectual malware is possessing, accepting that exists and just trying not to give a gun to it is the strategy?
That's literally all you can do. You will never get rid of it. It is not possible. It is in our nature. I
don't know about that hypothetical. It's very hypothetical.
It's not a hypothetical. Try to get rid of an idea. I dare you. Try to find some part of you that is causing you problems and get rid of it.
I think we've gotten rid of some.
Like what?
Through history, is there an idea that is just no longer doing anything? So let's think. You could probably think of one. An idea that is entirely nobody's doing it. Nobody's into it anymore. There's probably some that. Some old religion.
Oh, sure. But that's different. Something like growing out, like something becoming unfashionable is different than stamping out a problematic element of the human condition.
I agree if you go that big and problematic.
Which is what we're talking about. Racism, sexism, hatred, all of these things will continue to exist forever. They will just change shape.
And have different logos. And I think, and my, not necessarily my argument, but just my, like, not even opinion, just observation, an informed guess. I do think that sometimes it helps when there's a particularly effective magical symbol or really fucking inflammatory face and persona, like the one that that will no longer be president within a couple weeks. I'm glad. Can you be glad, even though that it's bad that we're all divided and stuff, that there's going to be some people who feel a lot better going to bed at night within less than 2 short weeks? Like that first sleep with Trump not president is just going to feel really good because of what that was to them.
Sure.
I feel good about that.
Sure.
But all this stuff, yeah, I was obsessed with the idea when I was making analogies of modern political figures to Hitler is always very cliche and crude and juvenile and wrong. But anyway, I was really interested in the question as a teenager or something. Could Nazi Germany have happened without Hitler? That exact person, like without him, could that have happened? And we don't know that.
I don't think there's any reason to think it would have.
It wouldn't have or would have?
I don't think there's any reason to think it would have.
So it required him.
Well, yeah, well, he's the force that rallied everybody behind his specific ethos. Like, he brought up the ethos. He was willing to champion it. He was willing to do everything it took in order to make sure that these ideas took root and became law. He was willing to do all the things. It takes a force like that to make things like that happen. Without that, they don't really happen automatically.
Okay, and I think the same thing about a logo and a condensed idea that just kind of it takes these things that are underlying problems that I agree will. I don't know about never. There's things, the nature of consciousness could change really, really big in the next couple 100 years when we start doing weird stuff to it. But something that seems like it's just part of the human condition and will never go away. Some of that evil, badness, whatever you want to call it, malice, can be funneled through these magical symbols like that,
Yeah, but that doesn't mean you can get rid of them.
Yeah, but you might be funneling them in such a way where they are more damaging, much like one puts the thumb on the hose and it can be targeted and be more pressured.
Well, sure. I never made an argument that you should do that. I just don't think that you should ever think you could get rid of them entirely.
Sure. But a more gradual farting it out across time as opposed to this horrifying manatee shit.
Depends on how you go about doing it. Because again, at the end of the day, you're dealing with the human shadow. And if you don't treat it as that, you're dead in the water. This is a psychological issue. It's not a moral issue. It's a psychological issue. And if you don't treat it as a psychological phenomena, then you're playing the wrong game and you have no chance of winning.
I would like to say something more optimistic, but I don't think that definitely the mainstream media narrative or the things I hear said on C-SPAN, I don't think there is much awareness of that level to this shit. And so we will keep dealing with the shallow shadow.
Well, I think what I'm saying is really optimistic. I think I'm extremely optimistic about this because what I'm saying is that we have a way out that creates long-term sustainable peace.
Which is
the integrative model, to look under the surface. What needs are being met? What values are being stood for? What can we actually agree on under the surface? Because if you're integrating something, I write about this all the time. If you're going to integrate a part of your personality that is truly heinous and has become truly corrupted and is by all means a demonic shadow of what it once was, you don't take its most awful, terrible thoughts and integrate those into your worldview. What you do is you say, why are you thinking these awful, terrible thoughts in the first place? What needs need to be met? What values are you standing for? What are you attempting to accomplish here in this really weird, bizarre, twisted way? And then let me align with you on those. And then the really problematic behavior goes away. That's what integration is. That's how shadow integration works.
I think that we're dealing with some things now that are just the fucking wretched phantoms of history a lot.
And I am simply not willing. To me, that would be a cop-out that would keep me, to me, that would feel like a cop-out that would keep me stuck forever.
I think they're just I think the world could have existed without a QAnon, and a bad magician made the idea to let that arrow fly, and it had consequences. To me, that's what I see a lot of this.
Well, how did we jump to QAnon?
Huh?
How did we jump to QAnon?
Because that's what and now we're at time now. This would take a while to be able to land this ship of how I respond to that.
Okay, well, we'll pick this up then. Maybe next week we'll do a whole QAnon thing. That would be interesting.
There's such a fucking we still have very much a disagreement about the thing. I think that it is very practical to, if there is I'm being metaphorical and then theatrical now, like if there's a bad magician in a world with all of this fucking evil, dark psychology stuff going on, some of which is just, part and parcel of the human form. I agree. And then there's a especially powerful fucking evil sorcerer who's conjuring up this vortex of hatred, and he's got special symbols that are proven effective in the past and have all of that fucking trauma and all of that fucking like ability to unleash hell within them. And you see him about to send it into the world. As a Gandalfian good guy, I do think it's meaningful to be like, nope, not that one. Get the fuck out of here. Because the stuff in them doesn't need to be.
Yeah, if you were dealing with one Sauron, sure, but you're not.
That's a point. I know what you're saying.
That's why you can't chalk this up to fantasy. This isn't fantasy, man. You're dealing with half the country. You're not dealing with one bad guy.
Now you're making it the Trump flag.
No, I'm talking about you're dealing with the people you share a home with. It's not Sauron. You can't just go kill Darth Vader. It's not that simple.
I was talking about about the magical spell. Now we're thinking about things in different dimensions, and it's confusing. Or maybe it's because we're having this conversation publicly, so I'm trying to do the thing where I'm having some regard for someone who just walked into this room and has never heard people talk this way about this sort of thing. But I do think that there are certain symbols that are so charged up and so shitty that it's kind of a trade-off. There's necessary evils and trade-offs. And
well, how do you get rid of it then? It's my question. Without making the problem worse, how do you get rid of it?
You have what already exists as a law that says that the limit of freedom of speech is you cannot say I'm going to kill all of these people. You can have it be more of a problem by saying you're going to do it at a specific time. And
so that doesn't really get rid of the symbol, though.
A candlestick, and no, but
that doesn't get rid of the symbol.
I'm not saying get rid of, but significant. In the same way, it's almost like this is almost a metaphor to flattening the curve, like you're not getting rid of the virus, but you're flattening the curve. You're not overwhelming hospitals. You're not having it to the point where there's this.
How do you do that?
Who are this fired up? Well, you could go back. You don't elect Donald Trump as president, for one, but we fucked around and found out what the full.
And he showed up because we tried to stamp this stuff out.
To a degree, yeah, it made it. I would say the division that we've been sowing for a long time made fertile grounds for him to arrive. But anyway, we're at the end of time, and we're at the end of our time for this episode, and we're at the end of the Trump experiment. Hooray! I'm glad about that. I am just plain glad.
Yeah, I'll wait. It's like that it's like that thing where like that old Chinese parable of the guy who's like, "Oh my god, like your son's leg is broken. That's such a bad thing." And he's like, "Yeah, maybe." And then people show up and it's like, "Oh, we're gonna take your son to war." And it's like, "That's such a bad thing." He's like, "Maybe." He's like, "Oh, actually your son couldn't go to war because of his bum leg. That's such a good thing." And he's like, "Yeah, maybe." And then it just keeps going like that. And more good things happen and more bad things happen. And this guy's like, "Yeah, maybe." To me, I'm just looking forward to the next thing. I'm just like, okay, what's going to happen on the 20th and the 16th?
Sure. Yeah. I think that I believe in the possibility for something that looks like switching the rails. Like we have been watching this slow motion train wreck for so long, and we've been watching the trains. Oh, are they going to do it again? Oh, we all saw that coming, and now we're all watching the rubble and the corpses and the horribleness. And now it's like there's other ones that we can see, and I think that there is a move that can be made. I don't know where the control room is, only other than in myself and maybe in my like small community. But there are things where you can change the rails on a controversy that was really just like phantoms, echoes of the past playing out, which is like meaningful, but it just sucks to analyze it on a group way because it's the fucking grilled cheese telephone game.
And that's kind of what I was saying, in that like I saw where we're at now as an inevitability, as a predictable inevitability. I was like, cool, this is where we're going. Cool. Let me see if I can try and mitigate with this integrative mindset and the shadow integration stuff to the most of my ability. Let me try and diminish this by teaching people how to do this stuff. And then they tried to stamp all this stuff out, and I was like, okay, well, like maybe let's not do that, because like that's not going to work, and it's going to backfire horrendously, and I guarantee the conflict will just keep rising until they hit a boiling point, and then we'll all be kind of fucked. This is exactly what I said back in 2016, and this is exactly what happens when you try and do that shit. And so I think the concerted effort that we need to make is to understand why people would do this shit in the first place, and to come together with them.
And I will add to that we can't have deep and mature conversations like that while we're dealing with a recent crises. And that's another one of the bad things about the temperature being so fucking high now.
I don't agree with that. I think we can. I don't think
politically, it's hard to change laws when you're making law, when the priority of our governing bodies right now, a lot of it is fucking damage control.
Sure. But I think as a social element, there's a lot that can be done.
On the individual level, there's always hope. And that's why I feel like a lot of us have had bad mental health weeks. I just straight up, I hadn't spent an entire day watching a screen in horror and humor than I did on Wednesday, January 6th. And it like, I had some really good momentums going before that. I mean, I am making it about me now because I'm talking about the individual. And God, just a day of that, of helpless watching the world fall apart, like seeing things that I feel strongly about, but I don't have a move to make it any better other than say stuff about it, which, you know, might be able to cause laughter or say something poignant. But I think that, well, the thing about being a poignant mind is like we're having these thoughts, and it's good for there to be someone who articulate the thing. Anyway, getting out of these hot, shitty, fucking like acidic, noxious waters that we're in now, I think is important for the collective to do better stuff. But as individuals, right now is the best time to do your individual work and do the thing, which if multiplied across the millions is what saves the world, is that a bunch of whole unified people come into the party of reality musical, the festival. It will get better around here. If we are doing our work individually, we will have better waters to flap in with each other.
But make absolutely no mistake that if you want that kind of unity, you will have to face, make peace with, and even find the underlying value behind the most heinous ideas you've ever fucking heard.
If you want, for the really wretched ones, man, but okay.
I mean, this is
what is the lesson history is telling us, I think, is the best that you could say about that. Like, what were the lessons around that? But that's not a value of the idea. There is. No,
I said underlying value. Like that's like that's why let's make this so hard. I'm not saying that there's value to the top layer idea. Like, I really need this clear. I don't know why this isn't clear, but when I say underlying value, I'm talking about what's underneath. What's underneath.
I have an answer to that, Chris. Well, I have my response to that, but it will start another argument. And we can have this argument. I'm not afraid of this argument anymore, because I'm now realizing that this is similar to the argument that you and I got in a car about and I think it's a disagreement about words and how we're saying things. I don't think that the spirit of what you mean to say is wrong.
Well, there's no other way to say it.
No, I think that there really is. I think that there is there is definitely being diplomatic to a fault, and that fault being honesty. But sometimes it's not to filter or to water down. It's to sharpen the tool so that it has the effect you want it to, other than the effect that it often has when you like. This has to be a whole other conversation, because especially if we're gonna have that conversation about words, because you do it. And I think that JP, Mr. One, Jordan Peterson, does the thing too. I think he would have could have had so much more just open ears and open minds, that where the good stuff that he gets across could have been received by them, perhaps like in the way that you and I have said, but both agree that we've received like some ancient wisdom that he's remixed, but also he's just presented things in a way that we understood that was very, very helpful. But it comes out in a way that is so anti-diplomatic that now the whole room is talking about words and semantics and accusing somebody of being a particular this hater, as where it's just like, if you know that that's coming and contending with it is a distraction. Like, I see some of these things as distractions. Let's get to the real thing that we're talking about. And
then how else would you say that?
I guess you're
talking about the underlying value of an idea. How else do you say it other than the underlying value of an idea?
The specific, I guess I would just say that some things don't work so much as going from a mass social metaphor.
But what would you do? How would you say that? How would you describe pointing to the underlying value of a concept without pointing to the underlying value of a concept?
Because I wouldn't call white supremacy a concept. I would call it I wouldn't. No, I would. That's a specific, especially in America, of like.
It is a concept. It's the concept that white people are better. It's a concept. It's an idea.
But it also has so many specific, in the context of America, of like, there's people who are holding on to an ethnic identity of a place, and that
you just don't want to look underneath,
huh?
You just want to, you seem to be resistant to, like, because you keep going back to this other thing that I'm not really talking about.
That's the one thing that I was taking issue with.
But I'm not saying
that it doesn't work with that as an example.
But that is the most important example for us to use. If we want this problem solved, we have to look underneath the surface. That's what I'm saying.
Damn it. I'm supposed to, is it 7 o'clock? I'm supposed to, oh shit, I gotta go. But we I mean, I think we just, we disagree about the need for, I guess it's not just diplomacy. I think that we have a real disagreement here about concepts and about magical sigils. And that I think that you can take a magic card off the board without, and you can still deal with the underlying psychology of that. But that particular symbol, that particular signpost,
how do you do that?
You talk to an individual in therapy, and you talk to.
But how do you get rid of the sigil? How do you do that?
I do have an answer of that. Spread the understanding that that's an intellectual malware that attaches itself to people, and that there is no such thing as a Nazi.
Instead, you spent all of that tremendous creative and intellectual power trying to actually resolve the underlying problem
within the person, because within the person and within the society, there are some differences
within the culture.
I don't know, man.
You talk to enough people that have those ideas. You ask them enough questions to expose what's underneath of it, and you show people that what's underneath of it is fear and pain.
in the individual, in each of the individuals in the group, I would agree with that. But I do think sometimes you got to make a trade-off in life, and there are always trade-offs in freedom of speech. That is so that I mean, I understand that this is going to be the most difficult time to have these arguments because and with the censorship sweep, like I'm glad people are arguing. I really hope that some of those arguments are constructive, because when you have something like freedom of speech where there's gonna be necessary evils and trade-offs, I mean, you don't get to, death threats are not protected speech.
Sure.
And the argument with I'm
not arguing for those.
Yeah, well, I mean, something that signals that this group of people aren't allowed to exist, outlawing flying that flag, is a debate, and the side I would be on it is that, yeah, that seems like a trade-off. That seems strategic. Yeah, that would cause that less of that specific symptom to plague us. The underlying stuff will still be there, and people will still have problems. But
if you outlaw something, you make people cling to it more. That's how we learned that lesson with prohibition. Like I'm telling you, man.
That doesn't work with prohibition, because
it does. You try to
wanted it outlawed were the people who would benefit the most from it being outlawed.
If you try to outlaw anything, you make it more popular. That's just human psychology.
This is a commodity. That concept. You
tell people not to push the red button, they're going to push the red button, even if they didn't want to beforehand. This is human nature, man. You're not going to fight this. You're not going to outlaw human nature. It's never going to work.
I don't think that's a human nature thing. I don't.
It is. It's
specific.
Trying to outlaw things is the single laziest way of resolving it possible.
I'm not saying outlaw having it in your brain or even like a poster in your bedroom, but there are things that in the public square, I think everybody, this is some role of government shit. This is some, I don't think that it's.
Then how do you enforce it?
Or let me say, I'm not sure. For me, like what would bear the best results. But right now, the amount of damage that was done by certain symbols appearing in public recently is so much so that making an effort to have that specific sigil fucking shining in public, I think that there is validity to that effort.
Sure. And I just, on a practical, functional level, I don't think it'll yield the results you want.
Well, people are scrambling to make things a little bit better right now, and I do think that it's sad that the more popular understanding is fight the evil, find out who's evil, and kill it. Is more of the knee jerk of more masses, and that what would actually work is like, what is our problem? What is the problem? And being compassionate and finding out. I'm on board with that. But oh man, it's a blitz chess game right now, and turtles are making moves, and some of the moves that will be made that will be seen as censorship by some, and somebody trying to save lives. That's like the age we're in. It sucks. The compromises of freedoms since COVID are upsetting, and also it is upsetting that it is so hard to make it understood what flatten the curve means. That's like that.
I officially do have to go now. My bladder's about to burst through my loins.
I'm about to shout at you. Okay, we had a really thorough disagreement. It might have just been about words, but this has been an episode of the NONSENSUS. Goodbye to all. Happy reality.